and welcome to the Moonshine Jesus Show. We're brought to you, as always, by progressivechristianity.org, a wonderful place to get all your progressive Christian resources. Hope you'll check them out and follow them on social media. Follow us on Facebook as well. Subscribe to the Moonshine Jesus Show wherever you get your podcasts. Today, we are talking about A Quiet Place Day 1, and I am joined, as always, by the one and only Mark Sandlin. How you doing today, Mark?
I think the world is grateful that I am the one and only. Who wants more of that? More of this happening? You know, I'm doing all right, man.
I could use more of this, I think.
Okay, I don't know. I don't know about that, but I appreciate it. But I do appreciate it. How are you doing?
Yes, absolutely. I'm doing great. And hey, we should let you know that Quiet Place Day 1 is pretty new. So maybe you haven't seen it. And if you haven't seen it, here's the thing. We are going to spoil it for you. So just know going in that you might get some spoilers as we're talking about A Quiet Place Day 1. Okay, Mark. So as we get started, we need a drink. Do you have a drink poured and ready for this conversation?
I absolutely do. And it probably is not a surprise. One of my favorite scenes was when they were in the bar and they were sharing a glass of whiskey. I actually happen to have a glass that looks almost exactly like their glass. My favorite whiskey, one of my favorite whiskeys in there. They had it neat with no ice, of course. And so neat with no ice, also my favorite way to drink it. So I'm good to go. How about you? What did you go with?
So I was really taken by the notion of whispering. And so I thought, I want something that feels like a whisper to me, something kind of quiet. And so I thought, I'm going to have a glass of champagne here and my little flute. And I thought, this feels nice and light. It's very summery. It feels like a whisper. But also, Mark, I quickly realized, you and I talk a lot about apocalypses. And I like to think that if there ever were an apocalypse, I would be relatively ready. But I realized very quickly that this is an apocalypse I wouldn't survive. Having to be quiet, I wouldn't make it. So I may as well just toast to the end of the world. I'm going to have a glass of champagne, and I'm going to toast the end of the world. So
You're exactly.
Here's to you, Mark.
It's so true. You would not survive. You had to be silent.
I know, everyone knows.
Fantastic.
Oh, what do you do?
I would not be in a quiet place. I would be in my happy place.
You'd be in your happy. You would survive. You'd be okay. I would be done. Well, you know what? I would just say, take me. I'm not going to make it. Just take
It's not worth it. You can't make me do this.
Nope.
Yeah, I hear you. You got to do what you got to do.
Okay. Cheers. Let's take a sip and come back and get into it.
Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus, won't you shine a light?
Welcome to the Geek Out segment of our show. And today, as we've said, we're talking about A Quiet Place Day 1. For those who may not know, this is the prequel to the critically acclaimed movie A Quiet Place and its follow-up, Quiet Place Part 2. And we see the origins of the aliens that take over the planet. And in this particular one, we do it as New York City comes under attack from an alien invasion. And during it, a hospice stage poet with cancer named Sam, short for Samira, and other survivors have to find a way to safety. And they, of course, soon learn, if you've watched the other movies, they soon learn that they must remain absolutely silent. Hence, Caleb's issue, if this were to actually happen. They have to remain absolutely silent as the mysterious creatures are drawn to even the slightest of sounds. Caleb, so overall, I know this is a frightening, you had to be more
terrifying
than the average person thinking about what that meant.
I was terrified. Yes.
Overall, what did you think of the movie?
Yeah, I was afraid to even make a sound in the movie theater. I'm not a quiet moviegoer either, and so I was very terrified. What if I make a sound? I really liked it. I didn't know anything, so I'd never seen the other two,
I was
and
curious.
so this was brand new to me,
Okay.
and so I didn't know what to expect going in, but I got into it pretty quickly, and I think
Yeah.
part of it is Lupita Nyong'o. She's such a great
Oh my
actress
God.
that she
Amazing.
really pulls you in, and you have to be a really talented actor
Mm.
to really pull this off because there's not a lot of dialogue, and
Right.
so
Well,
I know
you're
Mark, you're
you're
always on shows to
yeah.
tell us
You're
visually, and
you're
they did it.
jumping forward in the questions that I want to dig a little deeper into here. So this is great. What did you think of? You've already started to hint at it. The performances of the two main characters, and maybe specifically,
Yeah.
how did you think they handled leading a movie with so little dialogue?
I thought they did a good job. Because they did tell us what was going on visually, and I cared about the characters
Right.
very quickly, and I think it's because we're going on this terrifying journey with them. We're not talking, they're not talking. In some ways, it pulls you in even deeper because you have to pay attention. Yeah, it's an immersive experience, kind of, and so I felt like both the leads were very
Yeah,
talented, and their dynamic together was pretty powerful.
it was.
That I felt a connection between them and their bond, and so I think that really played a big role in bringing me into the movie. So I liked it, and I thought they did a good job telling the story. But obviously, I haven't seen the others, so I don't know how it
Yeah.
compares with those. Mark, what did you
You
think
know,
about that?
for me, and this was a question that I was also going to come to. So first, let me talk about that. I agree. I think the main characters are the key to the success. I mean,
Mhm.
the script was really smart, and that's where part of the comparison to the other movies comes in. The other movies ended up being a lot more of just straight suspense and played to
Mm.
that. We learned about the characters, cared about them enough that it mattered to us that they were okay. But we didn't have this what was a somewhat complex storyline. I mean, let's talk about the fact that we have a person who is in hospice, who's
Mhm.
facing the end of the world and is having to make
Mhm.
choices. And normally when someone's facing the end of the world, it is a struggle to survive. I need to live. I need to
Mhm.
figure. And so this is really smart storytelling to have the lead character be a person who
Yeah.
whose survival isn't really something that they're thinking that much about in a long term. There's just an
Mhm.
immediate need to survive. And I thought that that both of the actors did just an incredible job of making you care about themselves, and they both have this very uh, in Hollywood when it's such dialogue driven in everything. To have two actors who are so
Mhm.
exceptional at telling stories with just their face, with just the word
Yeah.
expressions. I thought they both were absolutely exceptional at conveying what was going on and what their character was experiencing through facial expressions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
and then again, beautiful storytelling, and I think that's what sets this out from the other movies is that this isn't a movie about being scared of monsters in
Mhm.
the big picture.
Mm.
That's not
Mhm.
really what this
Right.
is. That is the setting,
Yeah.
but this is not a story about that. This is a story, particularly about her character and
Mhm.
dealing with end of life
Yes.
and making choices about that and trying to figure out how do I cope and where do I position myself with that. And I think that was a brilliant move, and I think it makes it a better movie, which is
Yeah.
good news, I think, for the movie makers because, like I said, the first one was critically acclaimed, and I have to imagine that this one's going to really do exceptionally well. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, talking about the other character, Eric.
Mhm. Mhm.
What did you think of Eric's motivation when he finds Sam, who is going through all of this, and he's lost, and she's heading away from safety?
Yeah.
What did you think of his motivation to continue on with Sam? Was it realistic? Did you buy into it? What was your feelings, your thoughts about that?
Well, first, I certainly wondered why he was latching onto her, other than, seeing the cat, which I think is another interesting character, right?
Yeah,
The
for
cat
sure.
is an important character in the
Key
story.
character.
And so that's interesting. So I think, ultimately, it ends up being her confidence that he latches onto, because he's facing such anxiety
Yeah.
and terror at the end of the world. And so uh, it it was a little odd that he decided to go the opposite way, because he clearly
Yeah.
had a strong will to live,
Right.
he didn't find out exactly where she's going or why until later, after he's been following her for a while, whenever there is enough ambient noise for them to have a conversation.
Right.
And so I, I thought it was a little odd, a little hard to buy into at first, but ultimately, I think it was because she was so confident in who she was and where she was going, that he latched on to the confidence with anxiety. How did you think about the
Yeah, when it
rationale
was
behind that?
when it was happening, I didn't like it. My head was telling me this isn't realistic. And looking back on it, I think it's brilliant storytelling. One, he didn't know why she was so confident, so it's kind of interesting to watch her confidence, because she's dying anyway. So this doesn't scare her nearly as much as the people who think that they have decades to live. And so she has that confidence. He doesn't know that. So it's kind of good storytelling that he bought into that without understanding. But also, in the midst of that chaos, I suspect most of us aren't always going to be making rational choices. And I think it's kind of great storytelling that you allowed a main character to have this kind of like, he's clearly in shock. When we first see him, he does a great job of just visually, we can tell this character's in shock. It makes sense. It's the first thing that feels stable he latches onto in the midst of this chaos, even as it's running away from the safety that they've been told is waiting for them. So I kind of liked it after I thought about it enough. I think it's really good storytelling. I'm curious, though, out of everything that went on, we've kind of set up some of the interesting things here. What was your favorite moment in the movie? Or did you have a moment that really stands out?
Yes. Yeah. It's whenever they've gone back to her apartment, and there's thunder, and they've had this conversation, and they time their screams, their yells with the thunder clapping, and just the cathartic nature of letting it out, all the frustration and all of it. That was a very powerful moment, because it's also been so quiet for so long, and then all of a sudden, just this human emotion bursts forth from both of them as they're able to yell. And so that's one of the most powerful moments in the movie for me. Did you have a favorite one?
That's the exact one I was thinking about, because it really is. You realize how much has been bottled up inside it. You also realize how much we use vocality to express emotions, that they needed that release, but they couldn't because of the monsters who would center in on any of their noise.
Right.
And they wait for the thunderclap, and first she does it. And when she does it, I'm sort of shocked, like stunned shocked. Not like, oh my God, what's she doing? But like, holy crap, yes. Oh my God, that's so real. Like, you kind of get it. And she is so gutter. Like, it comes from the depth of her soul when she screams.
Yeah.
I think it's added to in that at the beginning of the movie, we get this overhead shot of New York City, and it says New York City is at a constant 90 decibels, the equivalent of a human scream. That they set that up at the beginning. And then when he saw her doing it and realized it was okay and sat for a moment, wanting to and not being able to, waiting for that thunderclap. When he let his out and she joined him, I started crying. I literally had I was wiping the tears off that because it was such an honest, real emotional moment where you could feel the horror of what's going on from the characters. It was great to be getting it from them in this still moment rather than the great, I don't know, I call them blind demigorgons, the monsters, the death angels. I think they were
They did look a lot like demigorgons.
They were blind demigorgons as far as I'm, but anyway, they did, like, the real horror of this movie for me was in that moment. It was also the real human moment. And I thought that was a brilliant move. Absolutely brilliant move. So we got a couple of minutes.
I had a second favorite. I
want to know.
And my second favorite was the scene that you described when you were talking about your drink, which was them in the bar, where she's kind of returned to a familiar place, to a home of sorts, and they're and they've got this beautiful moment in the quiet. And picturing like a room full of people and stuff, and that's my second favorite kind of visual moment in the movie is when they're in that bar.
The little magic show and the little drink together.
The little magic show,
and he finds the pizza, which I want to ask you about. Why do you think the pizza was so important to Sam?
Well, because it represented her father, and I think familial relationships, and ultimately the like comfort of home. I think is what pizza was really about, was the comfort of love and home and all of that, because they're going to this place where her dad always took her after he played in this bar, a place where she has fond memories. And so her, I think, sitting with that picture of her as a little girl, smiling so big at her dad, I think was what she needed. I think ultimately to give herself permission to die was to sit in that love for another moment. And so, but man, Mark, I got to tell you, as they were sitting there eating that pizza, the only thing I could think of was, how long has that pizza been sitting out? That pizza's got to be disgusting. I mean,
it was day one, so the pizza was no older than a day. So
I guess,
and I'm not going to believe for a moment that you haven't eaten cold pizza that's been sitting around for a day or two when you were in college, man. I don't believe that. Even maybe today, that you see a piece of cold pizza and you go, I'll have a bite and see.
I've got a box of day-old pizza sitting here right now. Actually,
I'm not surprised. Ultimately, though, I do think that the pizza and her finding it is representative of what I think the movie is actually about, because it's not about the monsters. I think it is about a poet finding her voice and finding her perspective about death and learning to be okay with it, and knowing that she needs to go through her memories of her dad to do that. What do you think that the real, like, ultimate thing the movie was about?
Yeah, I think I agree. I think I have a similar take on it, that I think it's ultimately about death. And that hit me very quickly. I mean, we're open on a hospice ward, right? So a hospice home. So it's about death. And I think it is about comfort in death, and ultimately I think it's about that scene that I was describing. I think it's about experiencing love for comfort in death, and I really like that. I know the theme of the first one, John Krasinski had said, was about parenthood. The theme of the movie wasn't about monsters, it was about parenthood. And I think that's one of the reasons maybe these movies are so powerful is because they're not about monsters, they're talking about other things, which made me want to go back and watch the first one. But I had to do it in a time when I would pay attention, because you can't be doing other things when you're watching these. You got to be like actually watching, because there's not a lot of dialogue.
If you're not paying attention, you're going to miss some of the important moments that are trying to move the story forward, for sure. And I agree with you. I think it's why the movies work. They are so strong because they're horror movies by accident, almost. Like, the story is really about something else. And I think it's a lesson for Hollywood, that if you want to engage audiences, all the big Hollywood over the top jump scares and stuff are fine. but you need more substance to make this something people care about. Listen, we could go on, and I know we would. As a matter of fact, I've got I probably have 3 more questions that I was thinking about possibly asking. But it's important that we move on and talk about the impact that this movie has in terms of thinking about politics and theology. So let's have another quick few sips of our drinks and catch everyone on the other side of this drop.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. We have geeked out a little bit, and now it's time to talk about theology and politics. And I want to start right where we left off, Mark.
All right.
So Sam kind of gets to die on her own terms, which is something else that I think is happening here. That it's not just about death. It's not just about coming to terms with death, but it's about dying on your own terms.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Christians have varying viewpoints on is death with dignity. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, Mark, some of the ethical dilemmas involved in dying with dignity, about choosing when to die.
Yeah, unfortunately, in the United States, there is quite the dilemma, isn't there, in terms of what the state will allow and what it will not. And you've got several issues. Do not resuscitate. You got the and that gets so complicated sometimes, depending on the hospital you're in and depending on the insurance you have and how they try to control that. Because unfortunately, in the U.S., healthcare is a profitable business, and it isn't about actual what they call it. It's not about healthcare. It is about selling healthcare. And because of that, the way that people are allowed to die and have control of their own death is really, it's unfortunate in that an individual can't have more control about that. Unfortunately, part of that is because it might hurt somebody's bottom line. But then we also have the issue of the state having such strong controls on a person just choosing that they are ready for death and having medicine administered that will allow them to pass away. I think we're a bit of a very cruel nation, ultimately, in that we don't respect a person's bodily autonomy. And you hear that a lot when we talk about reproductive rights, which is important. But we also need to think about bodily autonomy when it comes to a person who has reached a point where being here is not a positive for their life and who they are and their relationships with folks. The fact that we try to control that is just as sickening as the way the state tries to control reproductive rights. And reproductive rights, I get angry about.
Yeah.
When it comes to the right to die, I find it deeply saddening that we have tried to put so many controls on a person's right to make choices about their own lives. It literally, I'm getting slightly teary-eyed just thinking about it. I find it we're in a disgusting state in the United States in terms of end of life and choice at end of life. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's right. I agree with that. And I think in terms of the political aspect, and I think it's also theological for a lot of people. I think a lot of the places where people struggle is they think that, that one, if they choose to die, either by suicide or by if you're at the end of your life and you choose to die from by a pill instead of a terminal illness, I think a lot of people think that they're going to suffer some kind of eternal punishment for that. And
Which
I think
the church is responsible for making them think that.
That's right, because the church has literally taught that, and
Yep.
I think that is terrible theology
Mhm.
that is also very cruel in the same way that our
Yes.
nation has been very cruel about that, Mark. And so I think that we as Christians need to do a better job of saying that you're not going to be condemning yourself to eternal hell
Yeah.
by
Not
saying that
only are you
this life
not,
is hard.
not only
Yeah.
are you not, but there isn't an eternal hell. So, breathe a
That
little more easily.
Yes, right. And so I think that if we as Christians can do a better job of helping people to
Hmm.
come to terms with
Yeah,
that we'll be practicing a more compassionate religion.
completely
So
agree.
so I also want to talk about this idea of comfort and familiarity, because I do think that Sam was trying to get to a place where she was comforted, where she
Yeah.
felt loved and all. And so oddly, maybe that made me think about comfort in worship. And
Hmm.
so I was thinking about uh, the discussions that I know a lot of churches have about how much worship to leave the same and how much worship to change. And I was curious, Mark, is there something to be said for the familiarity of worship,
Right.
even if, like, the theology of some of that familiarity is not what we might confess otherwise? Because I think this is something that
Right.
churches really struggle with. Like, do we leave liturgy the same because it's comforting for people, or do we change it? What's your perspective on it?
That is a very complicated question, of course, because communities are different, and I always
Mhm.
think that what worship looks like needs to be directly connected to the community that is gathered.
Mhm.
Is there a place for styles that have been around for a while of worship that are connected to poor theology? Yeah, there is a place for that. It's not for me and the congregations that I lead, because
Yeah.
we're more interested in the theological reflection of why it's incorrect. And so we're not going to repeat the behavior of that incorrect theology, but we might
Mhm.
talk about it. But there are places where the comfort of that helps a person feel grounded and gives them
Yeah.
the opportunity to be open to what's being talked about today. The movement of the spirit, as some would call it. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think there's definitely place for it. I
Yeah.
personally believe that if you're going to do it and you know that it's connected to incorrect theology, and frequently incorrect theology is damaging, hurtful theology.
Mhm.
I think that it is important, if you're going to do it, to talk about up front, we're doing this as we stand in the tradition, even as we recognize that theologically, this is no longer where we stand, but we do stand with those who have gone before us. How about you? I
Yeah.
mean, like I said, this is clearly a very complicated topic here.
It is. It's incredibly complicated. I think in an ideal world, you help create. I mean, I think largely what we're talking about is nostalgia and comfort through nostalgia. A lot of
True,
times when we're talking
true.
about comfort in worship, and I think you can also create new nostalgia that isn't as
Agreed.
problematic.
Agreed.
Because one of the conversations, at least I've had a lot with churches that I have led, is that if you're embracing harmful theology, you're creating then that nostalgia for a whole new generation of people,
Right.
when you could be when you
Exactly.
could be introducing them into something better. So I
Yeah.
understand the comfort of liturgy, but I think it's also possible to update liturgy in ways that is not as problematic.
Yeah.
All that being
And,
said, I understand the need for comfort and
yeah. I do
ritual and
too. I
all
mean,
the
and
things.
all the stuff I said, I'm saying coming from a church where
Yeah,
we don't practice any of that. We don't even set it up and say, here's harmful theology. We're going to stand with the people that have gone before us, but we're
yeah,
standing theology. We don't do any of that. Even our prayers we introduce as a prayer, a meditation, or simply the
yeah,
opportunity to hold on to some words that might be important in your life at the moment. And we try to be very careful, but like you, it's important to recognize that there can be healthy ways of doing that in certain communities who may need it.
Yeah, great point. And we certainly in our congregation we balance like
Yeah,
very progressive sermons with sometimes more traditional music, for instance. Okay,
right.
one other question I want to
Yeah,
ask you, Mark, and I want to make
yeah.
sure we get to is this movie, well, about death and all kinds of other things, is also about kind of an apocalypse of sorts,
Yeah.
where the world is ending. And I've already confessed that I would not survive this apocalypse. And I'm also kind of wondering, Mark, if our Supreme Court right now is bringing on the
Oh
apocalypse of our
God.
nation. And I'm not sure if I'm going to survive this one or not, because we've seen the Supreme Court overturn Roe. We've seen them declare it illegal to be homeless. We have seen just today them giving broad immunity to Donald Trump. And I'm curious, Mark, how does our nation survive this apocalypse, and what is the role of Christians in helping to reduce the impact of this apocalypse?
That wow. Okay. Yeah, you asked this question on the wrong day because after the debate and then after the ruling today, uh,
Yeah.
I am finding it hard to be
Hmm.
hopeful. I mean, in
Hmm.
my opinion,
Hmm.
the Supreme Court just set it up to make it easier for a president to decide to be a dictator. That's frightening
Hmm.
stuff.
Hmm.
But in that is our answer in your broader question. I'm finding it hard to be hopeful right now. We need people who help us figure out how to be hopeful. Uh, all of our biblical text was written to a people who were being oppressed by a government. All of our biblical texts come out of that setting, and a lot of it is
Mm.
meant to bring us hope in those, or bring the folks that they were writing to, bring them hope in those difficult times and moments. The
Sure.
church desperately needs to become that voice of hope. It also needs to become a voice of defiance to these draconian laws that are happening in the way that people are being marginalized and set aside. But first, we need to be the voice of hope. And with part of what brings that hope is being the voice of those who will oppose anybody, including a government who tries to hurt and marginalize people. What is your take?
Well, Mark, that actually was kind of hopeful, I think. That right, because it
Ah,
it is a good reminder that the biblical texts were not written
yeah,
for or in the 21st century United States of America. It was a very different context,
yeah,
and they managed to find hope. And I think you're right. I think that one of the main roles of Christians right now is to speak up and to organize, to certainly vote, but to take stances that show how these kinds of decisions are contrary to the Christian teachings.
yeah.
And I think that the more we're able to do that, the more we're able to speak the truth and love to the principalities and the powers, the better off we will be. And so a lot of uh, these awful Supreme Court decisions were possible because of the organizing of the right and
Yeah.
the religious right voting. And so I think that the religious left needs to do a much better job of organizing. And I hope that this becomes our call to action. So I've got other questions that I would love to ask you, Mark, and I would like to delve deeper into all of these that I've already asked. But you know what? If I do, we're not going to get to our last segment, the make me look stupid segment, and we got
That's,
to get to
can't,
that,
we got
right?
yeah, we can't miss
Yeah.
that.
Now we can't. Okay, so why don't we take a quick break, grab another drink, and come back and try and make each other look stupid.
Welcome to the final segment of the Moonshine Jesus Show, our Make Me Look Stupid segment, where Caleb and I commence to try to make each other look stupid. or sometimes just ask a question that we don't know the answer to because we already feel stupid and need a little help. So Caleb, this was a good movie. It was a very good movie. Mm-hmm. There was one thing that bothered me pretty much from the moment that the blind Demogorgon showed up. I mean the
yes,
the Death Angels. Was that damn cat mute? What was going like? Yeah, I have never known a cat in my life to go 24 hours without making a single like that. That was a flaw in the storytelling, was it not? Like even when she popped the can of tuna, when you feed a cat, they let you know how important it is. I don't understand that part. Can you help me? Can you help me?
In all fairness to the authenticity of cats, the cat did bring the blind Demogorgon once, whenever it was walking on the glass and scratching at the door in the theater. But you know, Mark, maybe it's just because I'm not really a cat person. Maybe that's what this is.
I'm not either.
But this struck me because not only were they carrying this cat around, but like that cat was in water, like submerged in water, and that cat was fine with it. It's like it was at the spa or something. There was no like. I also thought like these people would have scratches all over them, like that cat
every time.
Water. And there was none of that.
That was the only thing that kept pulling me out of the movie every now and then was when a normal cat would have made noise. I was like, you know what? If this is a mute cat, they should have told us up front. That'd have helped me out a lot. If they just up front made some little joke about, wow, your cat's so quiet. Oh, well, lost his vocal cords when it was. If I could have just been given that.
And they had it declawed. And
that did get me. That got me. It got me a little bit.
I would also. That would be another way I would die if I was trying to keep this cat, because I am like deathly allergic to cats. Like I'm around my eyes swell up and get red. I sneeze. Like I'd be holding this cat and I just. Chill. I don't know.
Well, I'm not sure you really helped me any there, but at least thank you for allowing me to voice my frustration.
I validated you.
Thank you. Yes, you did, and that you did, and I can appreciate that. Do you have a question for me?
Yeah. You know, one of the things that we see early on in the theater is one of the characters, the dad. There's a guy who's kind of just flipping out and about to scream, and this dad makes the decision to kill the guy who's about to scream, and in doing so, he ends up saving probably at least probably his son who's there, but maybe everyone in the theater. Did he make the right decision in killing the guy?
First of all, he is the only person from one of the other movies. That is a returning character. Did he make the right decision? I think under the circumstances he did, because there just wasn't more opportunity to try to avoid doing that. And so the lives of the many outweigh the needs of the one in that particular case. In different circumstances, I would make the argument that much more work needed to be done to help the person not make the choices they were making, so that wouldn't be necessary. But ultimately, the lives of the many outweigh. So how about you? What were your thoughts? I mean, it was sad, and difficult.
It was sad. I wasn't quite sure what you were going to say on that one, but I thought he made the right decision too, because I mean, what are you going to do? The guy's clearly going to scream and kill you. So
it can be lights out for a whole lot of people because of that.
And it's actually, I think, self-defense in that way. That
it really is.
He's not just self-defense for him, but self-defense for all of the people.
If there's such thing as secondhand self-defense, then that would be it right there. All right. So listen, We are coming close, right up to
Yeah.
Wild Goose Festival, where we finally
I'm excited.
get to do one of our two in person, where you and I are actually sitting next to each other doing our podcast.
Yes,
So we get
we're
to
gonna
do
have
that.
a great time.
I know it. I can't wait. We get to do it twice a year. And this is one of the times coming up to Wild Goose. So we're going to take next week off as we get our stuff together, because that, while Monday would have been our broadcast, actually on that Friday, we're going to be broadcasting. We will be talking about The Boys season 4. I don't think the season will be completely finished at that point, but we'll talk about all of the episodes. So if you're listening and are going to be there, please go ahead and make sure you catch up on The Boys. I also should say, this is an adult show. Do not watch it with young people around. My God, please don't do that. It is. But we'll have plenty to talk about. It is very mature. We'll have plenty to talk about because there's plenty going on. But we also need you to know there are going to be giveaways in the background. If you're watching the video, if you're listening on a podcast download, you need to go catch the video. But in the background, you can see Caleb has the Moonshine Jesus Show giveaway that we have had in the past. It's a cool little moonshine jug with a Moonshine Jesus Show sticker on it. This time around, we have upgraded. We have our jugs, but they're no longer stickers. This is a permanent printing that we have on the outside of the jug. It will come with a preset with a themed adult beverage like Caleb and I always have at the beginning of the show. We'll have that for the first 18 folks who show up. We'll have those available. And there'll be a few other little giveaways, Huggies, and some other adult beverages and cans if you would like to partake that we'll have with us. But it's going to be a great time. We cannot wait to enjoy the Wild Goose Festival. So come and join us for that, and be sure to watch The Boys before that. Caleb, what a good show. I can't believe that I get to see you in person next week, sir.
I know. I'm ready, man. I'm
too.
excited. I'm ready to drink with you in person. And it's always so much fun to have other people there to engage with. It's fun to do it like this, but it's so much more fun to have a live audience.
And if you're on the fence about going to the Wild Goose Festival, please make the choice to go. There's so many incredible things to do there, including Progressive Christianity, who supports this, will be launching. One of the things that Caleb was just talking about earlier was the importance of churches to make stances on these issues. Progressive Christianity will be launching something at Wild Goose that's going to do exactly that. So if you're on the fence, we encourage you to go see our show and join the presentation a couple hours later from progressivechristianity.org. Listen, folks, we appreciate your time. We appreciate you being here. But until the next time, we thank you for watching the Moonshine Jesus Show.
Moonshine